Welcome to the Dr. Margo Show. We're so glad to have you here today, where what you hear today just might change your life. I believe it will. And I've got my good friend, Bobbi Reed, in the house today. And she's written a dynamic book. Let me just show it to you today. She's got a new book out called I Was Made for More. Let's see if I was made for more. Let me read the tagline to you. Recovering well from mental, physical, and emotional abuse. I'm just going to read just a little portion of the back of the book that I think maybe today just might be a little emotional. Maybe, Bobbi, just might be a little emotional today because you've really lived, you've recovered well, but it hadn't always been that way. And so I began to rewrite my future, and to my surprise, it included all of the trauma of my past. It is now time to give back. It is time for you to heal from your trauma. I did it, and so can you. And I have been with you a little bit through your journey. Not much, but some. Mm-hmm. And I've watched you heal. On the other side of all of your abuse and pain is a joy-filled life. It will just take a little work to get you there. I Was Made for More will help you begin the journey to a life of freedom. So, Bobbi, let's talk a little bit about your journey and help our audience. I know you wrote the book because you really had a heart and have had a heart for a very long time. That's how I met you. Mm-hmm. You have had a heart for single moms and people that have lived in trauma. So let's start there.
Yes, I think that I was born a giver and a caretaker. That's my spirit and what God gave me. Some of my gifts of giving and caring and being merciful. So I guess I was, God knew what I was going to go through from a childhood on. It is emotional.
Yeah, it is.
It's okay, though. It's okay to cry, too. But he made me the type of person that with him, I could make it through. I didn't know until later in life, like my 50s, that, God equips us to get through whatever we're going to go through because he knows ahead of time. We don't. And he equipped me. I did not know that. I did not know he was right there with me until later in life. But
wow,
he was. He never left my side, even before I came to know him. In a personal relationship. I was raised as a preacher's kid and knew the surface stuff, and you go to Sunday school, read the Bible, good, right, wrong, but didn't know until my 30s, I would say, start to learn about what a personal relationship it is and how I depend on him day in, day out, every minute of the day. So it has been a long journey, but a fruitful one.
So, I know that the tears come from just the trauma. And I know, I always say this from the Bible, that great victories come out of us reading the great trials mm-hmm. and the great, the hardships. And sometimes... And as a publisher, I say a lot of times what's very hard is to write about the very hard, deep wounds, the trauma, but unless you really write about the deep, hard trauma, people don't really know the greatness of the victory.
Right, exactly.
So, I know this book was deep. Mm-hmm. So can you go into maybe some of the deep trauma just to kind of help people hear how much the victories will be?
As I said in the very beginning, in the intro of the book, we've all had some kind of trauma. We've all been through many things. We all have a story. Whether it's full of trauma or some trauma, we've all been traumatized in some kind of way. And that's not a negative thing. I'm just saying that we've all had some challenges. And
some of us have had deeper
bigger.
trauma.
And most of us haven't had a perfect childhood. I don't know that anybody has. There's always been times you felt alone or not wanted or not needed or not seen. But I believe that my trauma basically started as a child. I didn't know it was trauma at the time. But hurt people. That's something else I learned later in life.
Right.
And my mother was a hurt person, and I believe she suffered from schizophrenia, paranoia. So at that time, it was undiagnosed. She had some mental disorder, and she had 6 kids in 9 years. So that's enough to stress a pretty sane person out.
Wow.
And so my mom was under a lot of pressure. She tried to control us, and how she controlled us was by abuse, physical, mental, emotionally. Childhood, I got told I was nothing, was never going to be nothing. And so that's something I had to grow up out of and conquer. And I had a negative self-esteem through my early years. I got married young at 19 to another service member. I was in the military, and 3 months into it, he started hitting me. So I'm like, wait, instead of responding, I need to get out of here, I responded, what did I do wrong because of my programming? So all of the things that happen to us program us to react some kind of way, either negative, positive, loud, pull back, be a clown because we want attention. It dictates our behavior some kind of way.
Right.
And it's not until, regardless of the trauma that we go through, it's not until we face, like you said, we face that trauma. In writing this book, God asked me to write this book. It took 14 years to write. The reason he asked me was so I could give back, because he told me many, many years ago that the trials and challenges and trauma that I walked through, that I would help other women. I was pregnant with my last child, who's now almost 35. So it's been a lot of years that he told me a long time ago, I'm going to use this. And that excited me, because I don't want to be a statistic. I don't want to be somebody who had something bad.
Right.
And my biggest mantra is, when you have trauma, there's 2 things you can do with it. You can either use it as a crutch and go, woe is me the rest of your life and be a victim, or the hard path. You can say, you know what? I'm going to make a difference. I'm going to leave some kind of legacy for my kids and maybe for women. I'm going to give back to women. And so how do I get there? And how I get there is to do the work. And doing the work is to find a good counselor, with God, of course, and go through the ugly things. You can't get over an ugly thing until you face it. I did spend a lot of my 20s pushing it under the rug, that proverbial rug on the floor. And I had a therapist tell me one time, if you keep doing that, what's going to happen is that dirt that you keep pushing under that rug, because it's too much to deal with, which was a way of protecting myself. Going through it and having things happen and having PTSD back then.
Because you just don't want to deal with it.
Right, and you don't have the strength to deal with it. Because I was living in a bad marriage, an abusive marriage, having things happen to me in the military, had PSD, did not know it. So I'm dealing with, how do I get through every day? How do I deal with all of this? It was just a lot to deal with. So I put a lot under the rug, and people didn't know all that was going on with me. I always had a smile on my face at work, and I was always joyful. I was hiding a lot. It wasn't until they started seeing bruises and stuff like that, they knew that it all is not what Bobbi is showing on her face or acting like. And then I had the therapist tell me, if you keep doing that, it's going to wear a hole in the rug, and all the dirt is going to come spewing out. It's just going to be a mess. So you have
at some point, it comes out.
Yeah, you have to take chunks of it. And she told me about this dresser, and I always remember that dresser. You take one piece and you work on that for a while. And once you feel comfortable, you've managed it, you've dealt with it, you can move on from it, because God brings us through. He doesn't want us to be stuck in things, grief or whatever. Once you get that one chunk worked out, you put it away in that drawer. Then you go get another chunk. Then you file it into that drawer. Once it's filed in that drawer, it's not that it never comes out. It's just that it's in a healthier place then. It's something that you can look back and say, wow, look how far I've come. And once you've gone through and handled all those chunks, now there's going to be stuff coming on in life, but my early life was a big chunk and a lot that happened. Once you handle that and feel like you're on top of it, then the challenges that come every day aren't as big. And God always is there. He's never left my side. I thought as a child, I didn't even know he was there. But I know now he was there. Because there's no way I could have gotten through what I got through without him there. And he put people in my path to help me along the way, too.
So the book is called I Was Made for More. And here it is again, and you can pick it up at bushpublishing.com, or you can go to any online bookstore, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and pick it up. Bobbi, why I Was Made for More? What about that title? Why did you pick that title? What does that mean to you?
Well, originally the book, for 13 of the 14 years I was working on it, was supposed to be named something else. The working title that God gave me was Yet, ... Still I Stand. In other words, I've made it through all this, and I'm still standing, and he's still using me, and I still have the callings of God on my life. Until the day he takes me home, I can still be used. But about a year before God told me the book was done and ready to be published, which was last year, I went out there looking on Amazon. I said, I'm just curious, did somebody write a book with my name? Sure enough. Woman who wrote, a female, same thing, trauma. She wrote that. So then I started praying, and I said, well, God, what title is going to make the most bang for women to know that they can get help from this book? And I listened. One of my favorite songs at that time was "I Was Made for More" by Josh Baldwin, and it talks about leaving the past in the past and coming up out of the grave of your past and just flourishing and flowering where you're planted and serving God. And I said, that's what I need to name my book, because we all are made for more. We don't have to accept, and we cannot accept what our past has dictated or a circumstance dictated. We are all made for more, especially if we're a child of God, and he's called us to do things.
Wow.
Yeah.
I was made for more. Mm-hmm. So there's purpose. People are made to have purpose.
Yes.
And you really wrote this book because you felt like that you had a purpose to speak into people's and speak specifically into women's lives, specifically into women that had trauma. Mm-hmm. And what do you feel like that you have to say to women that are living in trauma or living in situations like you were living in? Mm-hmm. What do you feel like that you have to say to them?
Well, I obviously, since I'm older, have the wisdom of the years. And I've walked through what they've walked through several times. So my first thing, as I state in the book, is always have a plan. If you need to leave an abusive relationship, you just don't leave without a plan, especially if there's children involved. You need to find a place that you're going to be safe from that partner. You're going to need to find a place that your children will be safe. So all of this takes planning. So if anybody's thinking, I can't take this anymore, it's getting dangerous. My situation was getting a little dangerous. I just knew that eventually, I stayed 5 years. That's a long time. I'm not advocating that at all, but sometimes we have to stay longer to say, I've tried everything. I tried counseling. He didn't take it seriously, and we had a child. And then when I started seeing the child react to his anger, the child, even though he was 1.5, knew when his dad was about to go off and hit me physically. Mm-hmm. He could tell by the tone of his voice. Mm. He started to react. If I wasn't ready to leave for me, because my self-esteem wasn't healthy, I needed to leave for him. And that's who I first left for, and to make sure I got out of a dangerous situation before something terminal happened. But I would say that there is a better road, there is a way out. There is always a way out, but it takes planning, and it takes very careful planning. You have to not think with emotions. You have to look at things like common sense and get people that are in your support system that can help you do it better and well and safely. Safely is the main thing.
Yeah, it's. I've heard a statistic that it takes, in fact, several times for women to make a decision. I think if I heard right, it's almost like 7 times.
Mm-hmm.
It takes that 7 times to really make a decision, because it's very hard.
It is.
There's
Especially if you're not working, if he's the main breadwinner.
Yeah.
You don't have money coming in from like you working, then how are you going to
How do
pay
you
the bills,
how do you support
feed the
your-
kid? There's resources out there.
Yeah.
There's lots in the community. You just have to do the research.
You have to do the research.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. So, so Bobbi, what do you, now your faith really played a big part, I know, in your joy,
Mm-hmm.
because how do you find joy after such trauma?
It's hard. It's very hard, and it takes time. It's not going to happen overnight. When I first left this relationship, my marriage, I was 25. And like I said, I was still in the throes of beginning PTSD. Just came out of active duty Army, went into the reserves. I had 1 child. There was so much I was dealing with. I didn't have a lot of joy at that time, and I didn't have a close relationship with the Lord. So I think that in time, as I processed the abuse, and I went into some deep therapy for the abuse from my mom, the abuse from men in the military, and the abuse from my ex-husband, when I got to a healthier place there, then I almost had more openness to the relationship with the Lord and being close to him. And I would say in my early 30s, by then I had 3 more children. That's when I started really learning about a personal relationship. And that was, like I said, 31, 32. I'm now 69. So it's been a long road and a process. This is not going to happen overnight. God can do things in an instant, and sometimes he heals us in an instant or gets us out of a bad situation. If we've planned well, he will help us. But nothing's going to happen overnight. It's going to take time. But I think just in the last 5 to 10 years, I'm going to say mostly in my 60s, have I finally figured out what God's peace is about, not letting anybody steal my peace, and feeling a joy, not because of my circumstances. That's happiness. Joy comes from knowing God and knowing Jesus and having him as your personal Savior. And the closer I get to him and the more he leads me day by day, I just sit there sometimes and go, man, look at where I'm at compared to where I used to be. But God has done it.
Yeah, and it seems like that in order for us to keep our joy, there's got to be a regular commitment to his word, a regular commitment to staying in his word, a regular commitment to a Bible study, church,
Oh, yes.
connect group. And, I've told you before that I think that you ought to do a companion book.
I know.
Out of this book, because there's so many women and men. I think there's a lot of men too that go through trauma.
Oh, absolutely.
That need to go through a chapter and work through what you have worked through. You've got so much knowledge and experience. You've worked through it with counselors, and there's so much in your book. Let me put it up again. Go to it. You could go get a copy of the book on bushpublishing.com or on your favorite online bookstore. I was made for more, recovering well from mental, physical, and emotional abuse. And Bobbi is going to read in the front of her book. There is a portion called quilt of holes, and I've asked her to read this whole section, and I don't think she'll be able to get through it without crying. But I've asked,
do our best.
yeah, but I've asked her to read it to you, and I'm looking forward to her reading it. And so sit back with your cup of coffee and let's listen.
This is called The Quilt of Holes, and the author is unknown. When I read this, it really touched me, and you're going to see why it's hard to not cry when I read it. It's very important, though. If you're serving the Lord, or if you're looking over your life and you're saying to yourself, what do I want people to remember about me? Or this is the kind of person I am. How far am I from that person? How close am I to that person that I really want to be? We have to take these assessments. And so this is called The Quilt of Holes. As I faced my Maker at the Last Judgment, I knelt before the Lord along with all the other souls. Before each of us laid our lives like the squares of a quilt in many piles. An angel sat before each of us sewing our quilt squares together into a tapestry that was our life. As my angel took each piece of cloth off the pile, I noticed how ragged and empty some of my squares were. They were filled with giant holes. Each square was labeled with a part of my life that had been difficult, the challenges and the temptations I had faced with in everyday life. I saw hardships that I had endured, which were the largest holes of all. I glanced around me. Nobody else had such squares. Other than a tiny hole here and there, the other tapestries were filled with rich color and bright hues of worldly fortune. I gazed upon my own life and was disheartened. My angel was sewing the ragged pieces of cloth together, threadbare and empty, like binding air. Finally, the time came when each life was to be displayed and held up to the light, that scrutiny of truth. The others arose, each in turn, holding up their tapestries. So filled their lives had been. My angel looked upon me and nodded for me to rise. My gaze dropped to the ground in shame. I hadn't had all the earthly fortunes. I had love in my life and laughter. There also had been trials of illness and poverty. There had been false accusations that took from me my world as I knew it. I had to start over many times. I often struggled with the temptation to quit, only to somehow muster the strength to pick up and begin again. I spent many nights on my knees in prayer, asking for help and guidance in my life. I had often been held up to ridicule, which I endured painfully each time, offering it up to the Father in hopes that I would not melt within my skin beneath the judgmental gaze of those who unfairly judged me. And now I had to face the truth. My life was what it was, and I had to accept it for what it was. I rose and slowly lifted the combined squares of my life to the light. An awe-filled gasp filled the air. I gazed around at the others who stared at me with wide eyes. Then I looked upon the tapestry before me. Light flooded the many holes, creating an image of the face of Christ. Then our Lord stood before me with warmth and love in his eyes. He said, every time you gave over your life to me, it became my life, my hardships, and my struggles. Each point of light in your life is where you stepped aside and you let me shine through until there was more of me than there was of you. May all your quilts be threadbare and worn, allowing Christ to shine through.
Wow.
It's amazing.
Wow.
That's something else that a lot of women and men who have had trauma, they feel a lot of guilt and a lot of shame. That was mentioned in that story. And we always are looking down feeling, my gosh, I'm not worthy of God. I'm not worthy of this. I'm not worthy of that. But that's not how God sees us. He loves us unconditionally. He made us. So a lot of my book is facing some hard issues so that you can get rid of the guilt and the shame. The guilt and the shame is not of Christ. It's not. It's of the enemy. We're not, as Christians, supposed to feel guilt and shame. You know, we do stupid things. We make mistakes.
We all do.
But that's why Jesus died on the cross.
Yeah.
It's a one and done thing.
Yeah.
He died so that we can ask forgiveness and we don't have to carry them around. There's many things in this book that I carried around for decades. Many things. And I want to free other women. I want to get to speak to and get my hands on to pray for other women, to show them we do not have to carry this garbage around with us year after year, because it affects everything that's deep inside that we don't know. It's affecting everything in our life. Our friendships, our love, how we deal with our children, especially as a single parent. That's a big one. And that's one of my passions, is single parenting. So God is just so good. I just can't say it enough. But have I gone through the struggles? Have I had to learn a lot of lessons the hard way? Yes. Has God taught me to be humble? Yes. Because when I was going through all this, I didn't ask for help. I didn't want to. I was embarrassed. I felt guilt and shame. And
it seems like a lot of people are. They feel embarrassed.
Yeah, and there's a lot of issues I write about in the book that people don't want to talk about. They're, you know. But the more we talk about them and the more we get them out there, we can deal with them. We can't deal with things in the dark. We can't, until you bring things to the light, they can't be dealt with. And so, like we talked about a few minutes ago, you have to get that stuff out there, and little piece at a time. Nobody's telling you to take too big a chunk. It's whatever you can deal with your therapist and with the Lord. And you do that until you get through the biggest the biggest part of it.
I think, Bobbi, that this book will help people that are struggling with trauma, will be a first step to maybe recognizing that they have some things that maybe they can get out, out into the light that they need to deal with. Maybe that they don't really realize are in the dark and that they need to deal with. And so if this is your first step, then grab this book, go to bushpublishing.com, go to Amazon, one of your online bookstores, and pick up a copy, and it'll change your life. And like we say on here, hopefully, something that you've heard today will change your life. So, Bobbi, is there anything, a last word that you would like for people to hear today, that from your book, from your heart, that you'd like for people to hear today as we close the podcast? Anything that you'd just like for somebody to hear that's maybe on your heart?
Yeah, I just really feel that all the things that we have happen in our life, some of it is our fault. We have to take accountability for all that is. But regardless of what happens, whether we caused it or somebody else caused it, use it as a stepping stone to help somebody else. I just think if we all used a part of what we've gone through to help somebody else, what a hugely better world this would be if we were all kind of reaching out our hand, not to take, but to give.
What a great word.
Amen.
What a great word. Thank you so much for joining me and Bobbi on the Dr. Margo Show. And we look forward to seeing you next time. And join us again. And don't forget to subscribe to our podcast. God bless you. Have a wonderful day.